Welcome to the Eggs Verse, a realm where divine beings hold immense power. In this mystical pantheon, one deity stands out, Lumi, known as the weakest god. Picture this, a being born to the two mightiest gods, yet strangely fragile. Lumi's weakness defies the very notion of godhood, making an ordinary human seem formidable in comparison. Lumi shared a deep bond with her godly parents, who spared no effort to strengthen her. But despite their best attempts, her power remained stagnant, a perplexing limitation. Tragedy struck her family as her father met an impossible demise, followed by her mother's erratic behavior, forcing them into hiding. Eventually, her mother met a tragic end, leaving Lumi grieving and tormented. In a shocking revelation, Lumi discovered the sinister force behind these tragedies, the elder god of suffering. Fueled by an unyielding desire for vengeance, Lumi embarked on an intense training journey, aiming to confront and defeat this malevolent entity. However, fate seemed to have other plans, denying her the strength she so desperately sought. Her power remained locked in an unexplainable stasis, frustrating her relentless efforts. Amidst the divine community, opinions varied. Some saw her as feeble, unworthy of divine stature, while others expressed genuine compassion, extending their support. Yet, Lumi remained resolute, driven by her determination to confront the elder god, even at the cost of defying her own weakness. Her story, though marked by an unexpected weakness, stands as a testament to unwavering determination in the face of insurmountable odds. Join us as we delve into the fascinating tale of Lumi, the weakest god, in the Eggs Verse. In the heart of her solitary training, Lumi felt a presence drawing near, a sense of unease coursing through her divine form. Wary from past betrayals and losses, she watched as a cloaked figure emerged from the shadows, an unsettling foreboding taking hold. Could this be the sinister hand of the elder god of suffering, ready to snuff out her flickering hope? Time seemed to halt as their eyes met, unspoken tension heavy in the air. Then, in a voice that carried an eerie calmness, the mysterious figure spoke. "Greetings, little one. I sense your burning desire for vengeance. I offer my assistance." Lumi's divine heart raced as she considered the stranger's words. Her instinct was to push them away, to reject help. But the promise of aid in her quest stirred something within her. She hesitated before cautiously replying, "I don't seek help, but..." Silence hung in the air, uncertainty palpable. The figure began to turn away, their intent clear. "I can reveal the general location of a weapon from the contractor's event," they offered. "But if you prefer solitude..." Lumi couldn't let them leave without knowing more. "Wait," she called out, curiosity outweighing caution. "What is this contractor's event?" The figure paused, their demeanor cryptic. "I won't delve into details," they replied enigmatically. "But what matters is that a weapon from it can harm EGS." Lumi's world shifted. Vengeance, once distant, now felt close. Her eyes widened as she inquired, "Where is this weapon?" Intrigue sparkled in the figure's eyes. "I have it here," they answered, purpose in their tone. "And if you wish, I can lift your curse." Lumi was taken aback. Her curse, a constant reminder of her weakness, had burdened her for so long. Suspicion mingled with hope as she questioned, "What's the catch? You're not doing this out of kindness." A faint smile touched the figure's lips. "I have my reasons," they replied cryptically. "So, is it a yes or no?" After contemplation, Lumi made her choice. With resolve in her eyes, she reached for the offered sword. As her fingers closed around its hilt, a radiant glow enveloped her, dispelling her curse and granting newfound strength. She turned to the enigmatic figure, gratitude and determination in her voice. "Thank you," she said, sincerely before returning to her training, her heart aflame with the prospect of confronting the elder god of suffering and avenging her parents' tragic fate. In the heart of the grand tournament of combat, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. The audience had gathered in great numbers, eager to witness fierce battles between warriors from diverse backgrounds. At the center of the arena, the head organizers stood poised to address the spectators and officially commence the event. Waves of cheers and applause washed over the crowd. However, the tranquil scene was suddenly shattered by a dramatic interruption. A battered and bruised man came tumbling over the arena's towering walls. His entry was abrupt and chaotic, leaving the audience in awe. Despite his injuries, the man displayed extraordinary agility and combat prowess. Swiftly, he rose to his feet and deflected blows from an unseen force that left the audience astounded. As seconds ticked away, a second figure emerged, cloaked in a dark red suit that seemed to ripple with energy. This being moved with such incredible speed that it left visible marks on the arena floor. With an air of nonchalance, the red-clad figure questioned the first combatant. "I'm not in the mood to try any harder. Can you surrender?" In response, the first being stood defiant, replying, "If you don't put in more effort, I'll consider this a victory for me and a loss for you." The tension in the arena was palpable. The second being swiftly intercepted the trajectory of a falling katana, which landed to the left of the first being. With remarkable dexterity, the second figure moved closer, prompting the first to lunge with his sword. The katana, guided by an unseen force, intercepted the blade, creating a mesmerizing clash of steel. In an unexpected turn of events, the second being executed a powerful kick, sending the first being hurtling toward the ground. The resounding impact rendered the first fighter momentarily unconscious. The second being effortlessly caught the katana thrown into the air, earlier and moved to a specific area of the arena. The defeated combatant eventually regained consciousness and launched another attack. However, the second being's agility was relentless, evading each strike with incredible finesse and redirecting the force back upon the first fighter. The climax of the battle arrived as the second being delivered a devastating kick to the first's neck, the echoing crack audible to the entire audience. The first being was propelled across the arena, finally coming to a halt, groaning in pain. Before he could make another move, the second being uttered, "That was a pretty good fight." With those words, the katana in their possession was hurled with precision, piercing through the first fighter's head until the end of the blade vanished within. In an almost poetic manner, the second being walked away from the gruesome scene in the opposite direction. They expertly summoned the katana back towards them and swiftly cleaned the blade, sheathing it with practiced ease. As the audience watched in stunned silence, the second being disappeared through a portal, leaving behind the mutilated corpse of the fallen fighter. Amid the aftermath of this brutal encounter, we find ourselves in a serene garden, a stark contrast to the violence witnessed in the arena. Lumi, overwhelmed with grief, wept inconsolably. Her sobs echoed through the peaceful garden as she exclaimed, "I told you not to." Her outburst was evidently connected to the tumultuous fight that had just transpired. Seijin, "Lumi, I will always be your protector." Lumi, "I am grateful for your friendship." Flashback concludes. Aegis stealthily approaches Lumi's garden, completely concealing their presence. They spot a figure dressed in pitch-black tactical gear patrolling the perimeter, skillfully hiding their identity. Aegis continues their approach and discovers the lifeless body of a woman lying on the ground, next to a shattered tanto. She is wearing the same attire as the mysterious man. Close by, Lumi lies on the floor, her body covered in wounds, with a deep stab wound through the bottom of her mouth. Two men are attempting to pry a sword from her grip, their expressions filled with sorrow and distress. Aegis moves closer to Lumi and observes. She is severely injured. Upon closer inspection, they realize that although her soul is damaged, it remains intact, indicating that she is alive but unconscious. Standing up beside her, Aegis tries to piece together what transpired. After careful consideration, they deduce that Lumi was in the midst of her training when she suddenly felt an ominous presence, urging her to move forward. Without hesitation, she obeyed only to be attacked from behind. The wound was excruciating and somehow prevented her from utilizing her healing abilities. Turning around, she demanded, "Who are you?" Yet, no response came. Swiftly, she readied her sword and charged at the man before her. However, before she could reach him, another assailant thrust a sword through her arm. Reacting swiftly, she managed to step back, narrowly avoiding a devastating blow from a female wielding a massive hammer. As she struggled to regain her footing, her head narrowly escaped being severed by a fourth individual. Lumi quickly noticed that each of them bore the same emblem, a black talon. Despite her dire circumstances, Lumi managed to create some distance between herself and her attackers. She knew that escape was futile. The first man lunged at her, stabbing her in the stomach. Seizing the opportunity, she retaliated by stabbing him in the foot and inflicting a minor cut on his arm. He hastily retreated, allowing the second man to make his move, wielding the tanto that had wounded her back. Lumi swiftly struck, shattering his weapon in half and causing him to stumble backward. She then pierced his hand with her own blade. The woman makes a swift attempt to strike Lumi with the hammer again, but Lumi is able to anticipate her move. With incredible speed, Lumi spins her sword and thrusts it into the woman's heart, causing her to slowly bleed out on the floor. Without wasting any time, Lumi charges towards the second unarmed man. However, she is caught off guard as the first man stabs her in the back of her leg. Just when she thinks things couldn't get worse, the third man reappears, ready to decapitate her, but Lumi manages to dodge, causing the blade to plunge into the bottom of her mouth and pierce her brain, rendering her unconscious. EGS, realizing what has happened, returns to Lumi's side and kneels beside her motionless body. They notice that Lumi is dreaming about Seijun, her recently deceased best friend, whom EGS was responsible for killing. EGS quickly decides to communicate with Lumi through her dream, using telepathy, saying, "I will only allow you to fight me if you eliminate the person who sent the black talons after you." Determined, EGS stands up and approaches the two men who are still trying to retrieve the sword. In their mind, they convey, "That sword you're looking for isn't even here," before forcefully smashing the men's heads together, killing them. EGS then takes a revolver from their side and shoots the third man in the head, ending his life as well. Looking at Lumi, EGS tends to her wounds and restores her soul. Lumi's face shows anguish and EGS walks away. After an unknown amount of time, Lumi wakes up. EGS is nowhere to be found, but Lumi looks extremely pale. EGS had appeared in her dream, which had turned into a nightmare, but Lumi understands the message and sets out on a quest to find the deity responsible. Lumi stirred the haze of unconsciousness, slowly dissipating as her senses returned. The air hung heavy with an unsettling stillness, and she couldn't discern how much time had elapsed during her slumber. Tentatively, she explored her own body, fingers tracing over unmarred skin, a silent testament to the fortunate absence of injuries. Rising to her feet, Lumi surveyed her surroundings. The fallen members of Black Talon lay strewn across the ground, silent witnesses to the violence that had unfolded. A shiver ran down her spine as she confronted the aftermath of the confrontation. She knew she had only taken the life of one. The others had fallen, presumably at the hands of the mysterious entity, AGS, yet, puzzlingly, she remained untouched. Questions gnawed at her thoughts as she contemplated the enigma surrounding AGS. Why spare her? A known adversary. A haunting nightmare lingered in her memory, a twisted amalgamation of dreams and horrors. Initially, it had been a vision of Seijun, a friend she had trusted. However, the dream metamorphosed into a nightmarish encounter with EGS. The cryptic words echoed in her mind, a chilling reminder of an ominous directive. "If you wish to fight me, you need to kill the one who sent the black talons after you. Only then will I allow you." The voice echoed in her recollection. "I will give you a hint. It was a god from the original bunch." Lumi's thoughts whirled, attempting to unravel the mystery of who among the gods desired her demise. The realization struck like a bolt of lightning. They coveted her sword, the weapon bestowed upon her by the mysterious figure, a weapon capable of harming Aegeus. Understanding dawned, and Lumi could now narrow her search to gods powerful enough to challenge Aegeus, if armed with this formidable blade. Days turned into a frustrating journey of dead ends and unanswered questions. The elusive gods she sought remained veiled in secrecy until an unexpected turn of events broke the stagnant silence. In her garden, a gentle breeze whispered through the air, carrying with it a single letter that fluttered and landed gracefully at her feet. Picking up the missive, Lumi unfolded the parchment, eyes scanning the brief message within. "Hello. I heard about your quest, and I want to give you this advice. Top 50. The cryptic note left her with more questions than answers, yet it provided a glimmer of direction in the vast uncertainty that enveloped her. The identity of the sender remained elusive, shrouded in the same mystery that surrounded her quest. Lumi's frustration bubbled within her as she grappled with the elusive concept of the top 50. Confused and irritated, she took out her emotions on the nearest wall, slamming her head against it in a desperate attempt to make sense of the situation. It was only when the realization dawned on her that the term referred to the previous top 50, not the current, that a surge of clarity washed over her. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Lumi narrowed down the divine suspect to a mere 32 gods, the rest having succumbed to the cold embrace of death. Thoughts of trust and betrayal swirled in her mind as she contemplated the sender of the ominous letter. Despite the uncertainty, her instincts guided her, indicating that she was inching closer to the truth. Determined to uncover the identity of her potential assailant, Lumi sought solace in her father's old book, a tome that held the stories of gods he had known personally. The pages, yellowed with age, revealed a scant 7 gods who were part of the 32 she had to choose from. It was then that she stumbled upon a familiar name, a close friend of her father's a figure from her childhood. The narrative unfolded before her eyes, painting a picture of a god consumed by power, surpassing even her father in skill, but lacking in raw might. The evidence stacked against him, and as Lumi delved deeper into the accounts, her friend, once a trusted confidant, was the architect of the plot against her. Overwhelmed by a tidal wave of conflicting emotions, Lumi crumpled to the floor, tears streaming down her face. The weight of betrayal pressed heavily on her chest as she grappled with the reality of someone she held dear plotting her demise. The echoes of disbelief and heartbreak filled the room as she questioned aloud, how could he do this? Hours passed in a haze of sorrow as Lumi wept for the loss of trust and the shattering of a bond she had cherished. But as the tears subsided, a steely resolve took hold. Rising from the floor, she wiped away the evidence of her anguish, her tear-streaked face a testament to the emotional turmoil she had endured. In that moment, Lumi made a solemn vow to herself. She would confront her traitorous friend and ensure justice prevailed, fueled by a determination that overshadowed the pain of betrayal. Lumi, standing amidst the vibrant colours of her garden, felt the weight of her responsibilities pressing down on her shoulders. The thoughts about what to do with her father's friend lingered in her mind like storm clouds on the horizon. Determined, she hastily made her way to a weathered table, worn by time and memories. As she sat, a cascade of ideas and emotions flooded her, demanding attention. The room was filled with an intensity that matched the fire burning within her. Lumi's fingers danced across the table, mapping out the intricate details of her plan. Hours passed like fleeting moments as she delved into the labyrinth of her thoughts, seeking a solution that balanced justice and mercy. Equipping her sword with a resolute gesture, she secured it to her waist. The weight of the weapon was a tangible reminder of the challenges ahead. With a sack in tow, she ventured to a storage area, carefully selecting crystals that shimmered with ancient power. One crystal in hand, Lumi knelt and traced a precise circle on the floor, The air crackled with anticipation as she invested each stroke with determination. The circle completed, she retrieved another crystal from her sack, a crystalline vessel containing both her hopes and fears. With a forceful throw, the crystal shattered at the circle's center, releasing a surge of mana that spiraled into a portal. Inside the clandestine base of her father's friend, Lumi's arrival stirred the air with tension. The atmosphere crackled as she confronted the elusive figure. "I know you can hear me. Come out, Abraxas." "I know you're there," she declared, her voice laced with a simmering anger that echoed through the dimly lit space. The seconds hung heavy, and a sigh emerged, signaling Abraxas's emergence from the shadows. "Lumi, what are you doing here?" he inquired, attempting to maintain an air of indifference. Lumi's retort was swift, her frustration breaking through. "Don't play dumb. I know it was you who sent the Black Talons after me." Her accusations hung in the air, a storm brewing in her eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about, Lumi. Are you all right?" Abraxas feigned calmness, attempting to deceive her. Unfazed, Lumi unsheathed her sword, its plain silver surface catching the ambient light. Abraxas, slightly taken aback, stammered, "How did you figure out it was me?" Lumi's anger surged, her emotions on the brink. "Who else would it have been? You were like an uncle to me," she confessed, a tear betraying her stoic facade. Swiftly wiping it away, she assumed a fighting stance. "I will stop you here and now. You won't get the sword from me," she asserted with newfound determination, the weight of betrayal fueling her resolve. Lumi's defiance echoed in the dim chamber, her unyielding gaze fixed upon Abraxas. "Lumi, you don't want to do this," he implored, the gravity of the situation evident in his voice, but she remained steadfast, a silent force of determination. "This is your final warning," Abraxas warned, his patience wearing thin. "Leave the sword behind, and I'll let you go unharmed." Time seemed to stretch as the standoff continued. In those silent seconds, Lumi's resolve remained unshaken, a testament to the strength burning within her. "Lumi, I'm sorry for this," Abraxas uttered with an air of regret. In an instant, Lumi's world shattered as her body was mercilessly cleaved in two. The pain was both physical and emotional. Collapsed on the ground, Lumi's gaze fixated on the ceiling, her mind grappling with the harsh reality. Abraxas approached her lifeless form, claiming the sword that had been the focal point of their conflict. "If you try challenging me again, I will destroy your soul. For now, I will let you live," he declared, callously opening a portal beneath her. Lumi tumbled through the magical rift, landing in her garden like a fallen angel. Abraxas walked away, a hint of moisture in his eye, a testament to the complexity of their shared history. In the weeks that followed, Lumi's body slowly mended through the miraculous power of regeneration. The scars, however, ran much deeper. Returning to the storage area, Lumi selected a crystal, its surface reflecting her determination. With a forceful slam against her head, the crystal shattered, releasing magic that obliterated the tracking spell bound to her. She stood, a mixture of pain and resilience etched across her face. The realization dawned. Abraxas had outmatched her not just in strength, but in skill, a harsh truth that cut deeper than any physical wound. Her gaze lingered on the garden, a sanctuary tainted by the memory of betrayal. Lumi, now free from Abraxas's watchful eye, faced the uncertainty of the path ahead, her spirit tempered by the crucible of betrayal and loss. Lumi, surrounded by the tranquility of her garden, focused on the rhythmic cadence of her breathing as she engaged in a rigorous training session. The crisp air carried the echoes of her last battle, motivating her to reclaim the strength that had been tested. Amidst the subtle rustling of leaves and the soft hum of nature, a realization struck her. Revisiting her father's book might provide the insights she needed to understand her formidable adversaries, Aegeus and Abraxas. With a determined expression, Lumi gently set aside her training implements and reached for the weathered pages of her father's book. The familiar scent of aged parchment wafted through the air as she opened it to the section on Abraxas. The words unfolded before her, revealing the vulnerability that had eluded her during the initial reading: his arrogance. "He thinks his skill is enough to win every battle," she read aloud, absorbing the implications of this revelation. Lumi's mind became a canvas, painting scenarios of Abraxas in her thoughts. Was he honing his abilities in seclusion, meticulously planning his next move, or perhaps overestimating his readiness to confront EGS? And fazed by the possibilities, Lumi knew one thing for certain. She needed Abraxas to keep his distance. As Lumi delved deeper into the passages detailing Abraxas's character and strategies, the words seemed to dance before her eyes, each revelation carving a clearer image of the foe she sought to understand. Meanwhile, in the shadowy confines of his dimly lit abode, Abraxas revelled in his own perceived greatness. His ego, a formidable force, thrived in the solitude of his contemplations. Standing before a mirror, he spoke boastfully of his impending victory over the elder god, envisioning a future where he would reshape the hierarchy of the gods for what he believed to be the better. With all these rebellions sprouting against EGS, taking them down will be a breeze, Abraxas declared with unwavering confidence. His reflection in the mirror echoed his self-assured demeanour. Thoughts of grandeur danced through his mind as he schemed about manipulating other gods to rebel, envisioning a scenario where chaos would reign. "I should make more gods rebel," he mused aloud, a sinister glint in his eyes. "If I can get 30% to rebel, then I can catch the elder god off guard while he's busy dealing with them. Sacrifices may be made, but the outcome will be worth it." Lumi had just finished rereading her father's book when a letter materialized out of thin air and landed on her desk. She picked up the paper and skimmed through its contents, immediately recognizing the handwriting from a previous letter she had received. As she read more carefully, the words seemed to leap off the page, addressing her by name. "Lumi, it's been a while. It's great to see that you've identified the source of the black talons sent after you. I've included an enchanted blank sheet beneath this one, designed to be sent back to me, if you wish to communicate further." The message abruptly ended, but upon inspection, Lumi found the promised blank sheet underneath. Folding it neatly, she placed it on her desk before heading off to train her reaction speed. Upon her return, Lumi found the blank sheet still lying there, prompting her to consider writing a response before resuming her training. She hoped to glean valuable information from this mysterious correspondent. Hastily, she grabbed a quill and scribbled a reply. "Hello. I hope this reaches you well. I've decided to accept your offer and engage in further conversation." Observing her own hasty, barely legible handwriting, Lumi realized she had no clue how to send the letter back. Despite brainstorming various methods, none seemed to work. Frustrated, she left for more training, hoping a clear mind might provide a solution. Upon her return, Lumi once again grappled with the problem of sending the letter back. After exhausting her options, she decided to reread the original letter for any missed details. To her surprise, the message had magically completed itself. "If you agree to send the letter, all you need to do is add some mana and a few drops of blood." Shocked by the revelation, Lumi pondered the necessity of blood in magic. Recalling her mother's teachings, she remembered that blood magic was often associated with curses or manipulation of blood itself. Doubts and questions raced through her mind. Why her blood, and what kind of magic required it? Lost in thought, Lumi wandered back to her desk and scrutinized the letter once more. Indeed, it only mentioned blood without specifying whose. The ethical dilemma of acquiring blood weighed heavily on her conscience. She refused to kill any living creature for this purpose, but recognized the need for caution. If she were to obtain blood from an animal, she resolved to keep it alive to monitor for any potential curses. With her plan in mind, Lumi set out to gather blood. Lumi decided to venture forth into a human world to fetch an animal, She stood up from her seat and briskly walked through her garden, heading to the storage room. There, she grabbed a few magic crystals, taking one shaped like chalk with a faint blue glow. Drawing a magic circle, she contemplated the type of world to visit. Should I go to a super advanced world lacking magic? Animals would be easier to find, but I might face strange reactions due to these crystals and my clothes. On the other hand, a less advanced world with abundant magic might not find my attire peculiar, but animals could be scarce. Perhaps an advanced world with magic, but the unknown factor worries me, she muttered to herself. After some pondering, she settled on a world where magic was known and wrote it in the magic circle. Opening the portal, Lumi made sure she had everything she needed, including extras like her sword and crystals. Stepping through, she was greeted by a world unlike anything she'd seen. A barren landscape with flat plains. After a few hours of walking, Lumi found a road and decided to follow it, not minding the time it took since she could return home easily. As darkness fell, Lumi's natural night vision kicked in, but she felt a bit uneasy about potential dangers in this unfamiliar world. Suddenly, she heard a noise behind her. Drawing her sword and looking in that direction, she spotted a lone person wearing somewhat subpar armor. "Hello, who are you? And why did you sneak up on me?" Lumi asked, attempting to sound intimidating but failing. Surprised, the person responded, "Oh, you can see me. Then you must be like me. Can you see in the dark too? Is it some kind of magic?" Lumi, taken aback, replied shyly, I have it naturally. Is there something strange here?" After a moment in the darkness, the person responded more calmly, "It's a bit strange. You don't look like any beast folk I've seen. They're the only species I've heard of with night vision. I'm one as well." Intrigued and slightly giddy, Lumi responded, "Beast folk. I've never seen one before. My dad used to tell me about other races and species, but I've never seen one in person." She noticed the person looked nervous, but the intentions didn't seem hostile. Instinctively, Lumi tightened her grip on the sword's handle, and after a moment of tense silence, the person spoke again, nervousness evident in their voice. "When it becomes lighter, maybe I can show you how I look. But at night like this, it's super dangerous, so I'd rather not take off my armor. My name is Ajax. What's yours?" "My name is Lumi," she replied quickly and coldly, a sense of impending danger lingering. She noticed Ajax tensing up, and after a few moments, she heard footsteps behind her. Before she could turn around, fear seized her, reminiscent of her defeat against the Black Talons. Her body froze, and she sensed Ajax charging past her. Unable to witness his actions, she heard a loud thud, growls, and something unsettlingly big hitting the ground. Overcoming her paralysis, Lumi turned around to face a massive beast-like creature, resembling a bear, now sprawled on the ground, either unconscious or dead. Ajax, wounded with a massive cut across their stomach, caught Lumi's attention. She hurried to his side, attempting to cast healing magic, but her body refused to gather any mana. With no time to create a magic circle, Lumi persisted, Ajax assuring her, "It's okay. I'll be all right." Lumi knew he was lying, but suddenly the healing spell activated. Astonished, she couldn't believe her body had mana after all. The wound closed just enough to no longer be fatal. However, as Lumi cast the spell, she noticed her nose bleeding. Becoming lightheaded, she collapsed, unconscious. Lumi opened her eyes, uncertain of her surroundings. Slowly turning on her feet, she observed a dazzling light. That is far too bright to be the sun, she thought. A figure approached from the light, intermittently disappearing and reappearing closer. Lumi's body tensed, and despite her efforts to run, her legs seemed sluggish. The figure, now within arm's reach, halted her escape. Turning to face it, she noticed it resembled a shadow. Before she could react, a searing pain in her stomach caught her off guard. Glancing down, she saw the figure's arm, and before she could react, it tore out her soul, right before it could be crushed. She woke up screaming, instinctively reaching for the supposed wound, only to find nothing. A sigh of relief escaped her as she began to calm down. Suddenly, Ajax burst into the room, checking up on her. "I'm fine, it was just a nightmare," Lumi reassured, attempting to maintain composure, though the fear lingered in her voice. Ajax seemed surprised but shared the truth. "You saved my life, casting healing magic without a chant. I didn't know that was possible." Lumi fell silent, pondering how she could cast magic when her body supposedly couldn't contain mana, questioning the events between casting and losing consciousness. When she asked Ajax about it, he replied, "Your nose started bleeding, then you passed out. I didn't see anything else." Concerned, she speculated, "Did I sacrifice my life to cast that?" There would be no other way for me to cast it before Ajax could respond. She inquired about their location, and he shyly admitted, "We are in my room at the inn. Maybe I shouldn't have carried you here. It makes me seem weird." Offering a reassuring smile, Lumi attempted to stand. Her legs were weak, but she could walk. Ajax tried to stop her, but seeing her ability to move, he allowed it. "Where are we exactly?" she asked. Ajax replied, "The kingdom of El Cluid," after a brief pause. Leaving the inn, the two began to wander around the city. Lumi took a closer look at Ajax, noticing his tail and ears. "I completely forgot you said you were beast folk. That reminds me, I heard from my dad that there are different types of beast folk. May I ask what type you are?" Lumi asked, her voice filled with fascination. "I did tell you I'd show you. Anyways, I am part." Before Ajax could finish speaking, both of them noticed a man wearing a strange, extremely fancy suit. He was being bothered by another man wearing armor. Ajax provided some context. The one wearing the suit is a brand new adventurer, Ansgar. He joined about 3 months ago and has already proven he is very capable. The other is an older monster hunter named Kalen, who joined before I was living in this kingdom. He likes fighting. It appeared that Kalen was seeking a duel, and Ansgar agreed to it. Lumi and Ajax decided to watch the fight, finding seats to observe. Lumi inquired, "You said monster hunter and adventurer, are they different here?" Ajax looked at Lumi with a hint of surprise and explained, "Monster hunters are tasked with hunting creatures near the kingdom to keep it safe. Adventurers, on the other hand, explore ancient ruins. It's often more dangerous for adventurers since these ruins sometimes house monsters far more powerful than those encountered normally." As Ajax finished speaking, the combatants prepared to fight. Lumi noticed that Ansgar was scanning the crowd, focusing on 3 specific people, including herself. After this glance, Ansgar turned his attention back to Kalen, drew his sword, and at that moment, Lumi's vision blurred. Her heart raced, and visions of the previous nightmare flooded her mind. Ajax quickly comforted her, and when the panic attack subsided, so did the fight. Lumi observed Kalen on the floor with both arms severed, shock evident on his face. Ansgar, however, had disappeared from the arena. "Lumi, what happened?" Ajax inquired with concern. "I'm not exactly sure. As soon as I saw his sword, my mind was filled with the dream I had." Lumi responded. Determined to seek answers, she added, "But if I want answers, I need to speak with Ansgar." "That isn't going to be easy. Not much is known about Ansgar. All that is known is that he is extremely skilled with a sword, knows a bit of magic, works alone, and hides everything from the public," Ajax explained, pondering. "I just came here for an animal so I can contact the letter sender, but it seems like I need to stay here longer than I thought." Lumi thought before turning to Ajax. "Who are you?" Ajax stared blankly for a moment before responding, "I am a beast folk who left home to join a war. However, I wasn't allowed to join because the kingdom doesn't like us, so I joined the monster hunters, where I work now." Inspired, Lumi stood up and declared, "Maybe I should join as well. I can't leave just yet. I need to learn about the dream I had, and I can't lean on you too much." A smile graced Lumi's face. Lumi and Ajax were walking through the city towards the Monster Hunter Association, having a pleasant chat. "Ajax, you never finished. You were saying what you were a part of, right before Ansgar and Kaelin had their fight," Lumi said quite calmly. "Oh? I didn't finish, I thought I did. I am part Felis Sylvestris," Ajax said shyly. As the two kept walking, they reached the Monster Hunter Association and entered. The group inside seemed to light up when they saw Ajax but looked wary when they saw Lumi. After a few seconds of people greeting Ajax, Lumi looked around and noticed that they were mostly beast folk. "Ajax, why are they staring at me like I'm covered in blood?" Lumi said, pleading for help. Ajax stared at Lumi as if he was trying to remember something before responding. "They do not trust humans, nor do they trust strangers. You fit both." Realization hit Lumi hard. She stood there shocked, the room dead silent. The silence was broken by Ajax's laughter. Ajax quickly introduced Lumi to everyone, and they took the test to become monster hunters. "Ajax, why are you taking the test? Aren't you already a monster hunter?" Lumi said with confusion in her voice. Ajax responded, "My test is to determine if I can move up in rank or not. Oh, before I forget, what are you going to specialize in? I know you can use a sword, but you can also use magic, so which one? I'll do the paperwork for you, you just need to do the test." After a few seconds of thought, Lumi answered, "On paperwork, I'd prefer to get my best skill on there, so swordsmanship. But I'd rather use magic in the field, so that I can practice it more." Ajax responded, "I see, all right. I'll do it. See you after the training." Lumi and Ajax went to their separate training rooms. Lumi walked to her section, where there was a group of other recruits, mostly beast folk with a few humans. There was a woman out front, speaking, but Lumi couldn't make out what she was saying. Lumi got in with the rest of the group and waited for further instructions when a voice broke the silence. It was the woman from earlier. "Rookies, you are doing the test with me. This test will not be easy and will determine what rank you are placed in." Her voice was loud and rough like sandpaper. Lumi was quickly separated into one of 4 groups, her group second to last. After some time, Lumi's group was finally called, and the test was announced. The organizers had caught some monsters of varying ranks, and the recruits were supposed to try and defeat them. They had the choice of fighting the monsters or stopping the test, in which case a high-ranking monster hunter would ensure they didn't die. Lumi was contemplating a battle plan. She didn't know how strong the monsters in this world were, but she believed the test wasn't purely combat-based, it also assessed how one handled themselves. She knew she'd get good points if she could focus, but she was unsure about winning multiple fights. Being third from last in her group, Lumi had ample time to prepare. As time passed, her group dwindled, with some leaving the building with joy and hope, while others were sobbing messes with tears. Soon it was Lumi's turn. Facing a low-ranked monster that resembled a wolf with larger back legs, she held her sword, waiting for it to make the first move. After a few seconds it lunged at her, but Lumi dodged and struck its back with her sword. The sword cut through the wolf effortlessly, revealing its exceptional quality, created by both her parents. After discovering her sword's capabilities, Lumi advanced through the ranks until reaching the middle ranks, where she decided to leave the test. She thought it would be strange for a new recruit to progress so quickly, attracting too much attention, similar to what happened with Ansgar. Lumi and Ajax reunited after the tests, with Ajax advancing a rank as well, now 2 ranks above Lumi. They walked to a nearby forest to start their day, needing money. After a lengthy walk, they found themselves in a clearing with a big hill and a massive tree. Lumi and Ajax dealt with the lurking monsters before lying down by the tree. "We should take a break here," Ajax said with a yawn. "Should I take the first watch?" Lumi asked, reaching for her sword. "No need. We are next to the oakish elderwood tree. It repels monsters." "No one is sure how," though Ajax replied, almost asleep. "Ajax, if we want to find Ansgar, we need to figure out the people he was looking at before his duel. He looked at 3 people from the crowd, and I was one of them. We should find out who the other two are, Lumi said loudly to make sure Ajax heard her. One of them was a man named Uriel. I'm not sure about the other, but you should also get some Slail before Ajax could finish. He had passed out. Lumi lay down next to the tree, about 3 meters from Ajax, drifting to sleep. Meanwhile, Abraxas was in a camp filled with gods, distributing high-quality weapons. These weren't high-ranking gods. It seemed Abraxas was coercing them to attack, EGS. Lumi, wake up. Lumi, wake up, Ajax whispered in a hasty tone. After a few seconds, Lumi woke up, stood up, and grabbed her sword. She looked around for a few seconds before asking Ajax, "Why did you wake me up? It's pitch black out." Ajax responded, "We need to get out of here. I forgot tomorrow was the festival." "What festival?" Lumi asked. "There is an annual festival around this tree. We aren't supposed to be here today," Ajax replied hastily. The two of them quickly and silently went around the tree towards the forest just as 2 men came, seemingly looking for people. As the 2 men looked around the tree, they eventually left. Both Lumi and Ajax then left for town. After 2 hours of walking, it began to be sunrise. "Ajax, what would have happened if we got caught?" Lumi asked curiously. "You would have gotten a few months in prison, while I would most likely have gotten executed," Ajax replied. "Why is there a difference?" Lumi asked. "Because beastfolk isn't appreciated," Ajax replied, shyly. "Why aren't they appreciated?" Lumi asked. "Humans prefer to see us as half monster," Ajax replied, still shy. As the two kept walking, they eventually made their way into town. The stores were beginning to open. Lumi and Ajax split up, with Ajax going to buy some food and Lumi going to sell the haul from their hunt. As Lumi was walking, she noticed a strange light coming out of a building. She tried walking past it, but there was something about it that lured her in. When she entered the building, she found herself in the same place as her dream. Her heart was pounding, her breathing became short and rapid, her legs were shaking heavily, and they gave out, leaving her on the floor. The shadowy figure approached. She tried to stand up, but her legs didn't want to work. She tried screaming for help, but her voice was gone. The figure finally got to her and ripped out her soul, right before starting to crush it. The pain Lumi felt was exceedingly painful. As her vision was blurry, she got a feeling that this figure was smiling, enjoying her suffering. After a few seconds of this, the figure stopped crushing her soul and just stared at her. What do you want with me?" Lumi finally managed to speak. For only a few moments it was completely silent, but for Lumi it felt like an eternity. Finally, the figure spoke in a cold and calculative voice, breaking the silence. "Your reaction was not how you would react normally unless you knew what would happen." Lumi was surprised that this figure knew her so well. She didn't know how to respond, but finally she stammered out, "I had a dream about a week ago. This happened in the dream." The figure took a few steps back before responding in the same tone. "Premonitions are possible, but they don't work against me unless you have a hidden type ability." "There is no way. Someone as weak as me couldn't have a hidden type," Lumi replied. The figure began to walk away, saying, "We will meet again. Till then, Lumi." The world returned to normal, and Lumi sat on the floor, thinking about the fact that she might have a hidden type. After some time, she stood up and went to the Monster Hunter Association to sell their haul. Lumi and Ajax eventually met up in a tavern. It was filled with a group of humans partying hard, and Lumi and Axe were discussing what happened today. The tavern was loud. There was loud chatter and people slamming mugs down, and the room smelt of ale. Lumi and Ajax were sitting by the wall, away from the party. Over there it was quieter. Lumi sat with her back to the wall. She was still in shock, but she kept her guard up. Ajax had his back towards the group. It was clear that he wasn't as worried. So this figure, what did they say? Ajax's tone was more curious than anything, but he seemed very worried for Lumi. They were talking about how it was strange that I dreamed of them, and I might have a hidden type, Lumi said, her voice shaking. Hidden type? I've heard about magic from people in the association, but I've never heard them speak about something called hidden type, Ajax said. It makes sense that you wouldn't know about it, otherwise where would the hidden part of the name come from? Hidden type spells are spells that don't follow the rules of magic. They cannot be understood. Lumi's voice was still shaky, but it was calming down, and they are extremely powerful. The sounds of bumbling drunks and mugs falling to the ground became louder as Ajax thought of what he had just learned. How do you know about it? Ajax didn't intend to say a thing, but it just slipped out. A few more people came into the tavern. One of them had pure grey eyes, and he seemed interested in Lumi's conversation with Ajax. Lumi's cyan eyes met this stranger's before he began to walk over. Lumi was worried but slowly answered Ajax. My mum was a talented mage who taught me about it. Her voice was short and stiff as she kept looking at this stranger approach her. Ajax saw the worried look in Lumi's eyes and turned around to see a tall man. He was wearing a brown overcoat. He had short black hair that was well kept and a scar on his right cheek. It looked like the head of an arrow. He approached fast, his footsteps muffled by the chatter of the drunks. Ajax was surprised at this man approaching them, and he stood up and blocked this stranger from reaching Lumi. The stranger simply stared at Lumi. He was about a foot or two taller than Ajax. He spoke with a deep, calm voice. You were one of the three that Ansgar glared at. How do you know that? Lumi said, but was evidently more worried now. That doesn't matter. All that does matter is that I was also one of them, the stranger said. His voice was somehow even more calm than before. Lumi was shocked into silence. She looked over at Ajax, but he didn't seem to recognize this person. If Ajax doesn't know this guy, then it can't be Uriel, Lumi thought to herself, almost speaking it aloud, but she caught her voice. One of the drunks came stumbling toward the group. His smelled like sweat and mead, and he started hitting on Lumi. She noticed that his breath smelled like boiled onions and mead, and she started to look very uncomfortable. Upon noticing this, the stranger walked over to the drunk and pushed him away towards the rest of the drunks. The thud could be heard over the chatter. It seemed like one of them thought a fight was starting, and so they began to brawl. After a few seconds, the tavern started to smell of ale and sweat. Ajax and Lumi stood up prepared to leave. As they picked up the things, the stranger asked them if they had a place to go. While Lumi and Ajax thought about it, the room started to smell of blood along with the smells of before. No, we don't have anywhere to go. Why do you ask? Lumi answered the man. She was more comfortable with him as he had helped her. I want to continue talking with you. If you'd like, you can use my house. His voice was still calm. He was trying to smile, but it looked horrible. Lumi and Ajax looked at each other and nodded. Sure, we'll go, both of them said in unison. The three of them walked past the fighting drunks by sticking to the wall. The room now had a puddle of blood on the floor. Bottles were smashed and the screaming started. As the three of them left the building, the cold nighttime wind blew past them. The streets were full of people drinking and partying, and the trio kept walking, eventually leaving the city. It was a calm, chilly night. They walked in complete silence. The only sounds were of breathing and footsteps that were muffled by the grass. As they reached further out of the city, the stranger pointed to an old cottage further up. There she is. Isn't she wonderful? It was the first time where his voice wasn't calm. He was happy to see his house. As the trio got closer, Lumi noticed the cottage looked very rustic and old, with a beautiful garden surrounding it. There were a lot of roses, azaleas and carnations grown there. As they entered the house, they looked around for a bit before sitting down in the main room. I'm going to make some food. Would you two like some as well? The stranger said. He was still trying to give a smile, but he looked out of practice. Yes, please, Ajax said. He seemed to be very hungry after the walk. What are you making? Lumi asked, still somewhat suspicious of this stranger. The stranger ignored Lumi's question and left the room, turning on a stove. Lumi, now alone with Ajax, decided to look around the room. The wooden floor creaked as Lumi skulked around. She noticed that the room was very minimalistic and it looked like only one person lived there. Lumi walked around the room more, Ajax just watching in silence. She found old war medals and a piece of paper, but before she could open it, the stranger stepped back into the room, causing Lumi to quickly sit back down, causing a creak in the chair. The stranger had brought a delicious-looking stew made with deer and elk. He placed the dish on the table in front of them, but Lumi and Ajax didn't eat it. They watched as the stranger ate some of the food before they started to eat. "Who are you?" Ajax finally decided to ask. The stranger looked up from his bowl and said, "I'm a nobody called Daex Nox." Both Lumi and Ajax looked confused. That name wasn't like any they had ever heard. Before Lumi or Ajax had the chance to speak, Daex Nox spoke again. "The name is Latin, the language isn't used anymore." Lumi and Ajax were sitting in the old cottage. It was really quiet as the two awkwardly stared at Daex Nox. Time seemed to stretch on for an eternity as Daex Nox scanned over Lumi and Ajax with his grey eyes. Lumi finally spoke in a curious yet shy tone. "Why would you have such an ancient name?" "I keep it, so I can remember a place now forgotten," Daex Nox answered, his voice slightly dripping with a tone of sadness. "Anyways, let's talk about the reason I brought you two here. I heard that Lumi might possess a hidden type." "Someone weak like me cannot have a hidden type. Only the strong have hidden types," Lumi responded. She looked away, avoiding eye contact. She looked sad. "Don't fool yourself and your nonsensical delusion about hidden types," Daex Nox shouted towards Lumi. "Weak, strong, it doesn't matter. Your chance of getting a hidden type is the same as everybody else regardless of strength." Lumi looked shocked. No one had ever shouted at her like that. She looked over at Ajax, but as she looked at him, she felt a weird feeling, like butterflies in her stomach. He was sitting quietly just watching the conversation. And then, with a meek voice, she asked Daex Nox, "How would you know?" Daex Nox picked up his now cold stew and began eating it, and he spoke with a calm yet stern voice, "Because I have one." Lumi's eyes flickered with a curious hope. She asked Daex Nox, "Then what do you know about hidden types?" "A hidden type is not a tool for the strong to stay strong. It is a tool for the weak to become strong. I may be strong now, but I was once weak," Daex Nox responded, his voice sounding proud, but also like he was holding back tears. "Why does it sound like you want to cry?" Ajax asked. No longer silent, his heavy voice caught Lumi and Daex off guard. "Unpleasant past," Daex Nox answered Ajax sternly. "I don't want to go into it." Lumi began to walk toward a cupboard, the floor creaking under her small feet. Reaching down, she picked up one of the old medals that lay there, holding it up for Daex Nox to see. "Is this connected to your past?" Lumi asked calmly. "Yes, it is. However, you must remember I didn't bring you to my house so we can talk about my past. We came to talk about you having a hidden type," Daex Nox answered, his voice sounding angry. "All right then. Let's continue to speak about hidden types," Lumi responded, her voice having a hint of fear. Quickly, Lumi sat down, the old chair creaking beneath her weight. She stared down at her cold stew, unsure how to act in front of Daex Nox. Lumi and Ajax stared blankly at Daex Nox before he spoke calmly. "Lumi, when you spoke with this shadowy figure, what exactly did it say?" "They said premonitions are possible, but they don't work against me unless you have a hidden type ability," Lumi answered, her heart pounding fast. "Can I know how you know about this shadowy figure?" "I know I didn't tell you. I overheard you while you were speaking to your friend. However, it seems this figure is strong or pretentious, and it seems like they could possess their own hidden type." Daex Nox said, his voice filled with intrigue. "Hey Lumi, could I check your soul? I want to test if you do have a hidden type." "Is that even possible?" Lumi asked, her voice filled with curiosity. Yes, it is, however, if you have a hidden type. I cannot see the details about it, DX Nox responded. Then, go ahead, Lumi replied. DX Nox stood up from his seat and walked over toward Lumi, his heavy footsteps creaking heavily on the floor, and he placed his hand on Lumi's head. A purple glow started to envelop Lumi. You have very few abilities, but it seems like you do have a hidden type, DX Nox said, calmly whilst T cut himself off as he spoke. Lumi felt the cold touch of metal pressed against her throat. As she looked down, she saw a pitch-black falchion held by DX Nox. He looked very pissed. Black falchion with a red spine. DX Nox. Lumi thought to herself, her heart pounding rapidly. There is no way. How did I run into him? Why did I run into him? DX Nox, the god beheader. Time seemed to slow as Lumi looked over at Ajax, who was standing up from his chair. Looking back towards DX Nox, she noticed he was looking at Ajax. Taking this moment, she kicked her leg into the chair. As she hit the ground, she narrowly dodged a swing from DX Nox. She quickly made her way towards Ajax, while DX Nox just stared at her. Why are you doing this? If you wanted to kill us, you would have done it far earlier, Lumi shouted at DX Nox. You already know, don't you? You cannot hide it any longer. Lumi, you're a god, DX Nox angrily shouted towards Lumi, his grey eyes giving a death stare at Lumi. No, she isn't a god. You can't be joking, Ag said, looking over to Lumi to confirm. No, he's right. I'm a god. It's not like the others consider me one, Lumi answered, her voice shy and her heart still beating rapidly. Ajax was standing there, his mouth agape. Lumi, if you have a title, what is it? DX Nox asked angrily. Among the gods, I am known as Lumi, the weakest god, Lumi replied, sadness evident in her voice. But why would the god beheader want to kill me? I've done nothing to you. You gods took everything from me. I thought I killed the last of them 1,000 years ago, but a few must have slipped through. DX Nox shouted at Lumi, a tear forming in his eye as he walked toward her. Ajax quickly made his way around the back of the table, where he slammed a chair into the back of DX Nox with a loud audible thud. As DX turned back toward Ajax, he noticed that the wooden chair was now made from steel. As DX Nox stared at the steel chair, he looked toward the exit. Before speaking in a cold voice, Uriel, you can come in. There were a few seconds of pure silence before the door creaked open, and a tall man with golden eyes came walking into the cottage. He stood with his back straight, and with his white hair combed back. Don't even start with me, Uriel. You are going to go on about how I shouldn't kill her because she might have a family. DX Nox cut Uriel off before he could even speak. You are just a family man with a powerful ability, so stay out. We may have only met a few weeks ago, but you seem to know me well. You're right, I don't think you should kill her, however, not for the reason you think. She was one of us when Ansgar stared at us. If we are going to figure out who that was, we need her alive. Uriel answered, his voice calm and polite. DX Nox, upon listening to what Uriel had to say before dropping his falchion, the entire room was enveloped in red lightning before the blade disappeared. DX Nox turned to Lumi, and he asked her in a cold voice, do you know who Ansgar is? Lumi looked towards DX Nox, and she thought, these are the strongest humans I've ever seen. DX Nox, a human that killed all the gods, ruler of his home planet. And Uriel, I don't know much about him, but his aura tells me he could destroy this world easily. I have no clue who Ansgar is, but when he had that fight with Kalen, I saw his sword, and it triggered a response to me, which showed me a premonition I had the previous night, Lumi said, her voice shaky. And from what I gather, your premonition led you to meet that shadowy figure. Do you know who they could be? DX Nox asked, his voice now in a curious tone. I don't know exactly, but I have a feeling it's EGS, someone who I feared for most of my life, Lumi responded, her eyes focusing on DX's hands while she spoke. EGS. Who is that? I've never heard a name like that, Uriel asked Lumi while looking at DX Nox. The elder god of suffering. He is a god that makes every other being look weak in comparison, Lumi answered, her voice becoming quiet. Regardless of how strong he is, I will kill him. Like all other gods, Tier 2 immortals are simple for me to kill, DX Nox responded, his voice dripping with confidence. Dix Nox, based on the way she described him. I doubt it would be that easy, Uriel told Dix Nox. Tier 3 EGS has Tier 3 immortality, not Tier 2 like the rest of us, Lumi responded. That isn't possible. There is nothing with Tier 3 immortality. Don't lie to me, Dix Nox shouted at Lumi. Dix Nox. What is a Tier 3 immortal, Uriel asked Dix Nox. Tier 3 immortality, also known as perfect immortality. Nothing will be able to kill one, Dix Nox responded. Lumi interrupted Uriel. I'm not lying about EGS being Tier 3, and there are more than him, 10. 9 others have it. Both Uriel and Dix Nox stop talking, and they simply stare at Lumi dumbfounded. Taking this moment, both Ajax and Lumi run out of the old cottage, making it down the hill slightly before running into a wall that just appeared there. It covered the entire cottage, and it smelled of iron. Lumi and Ajax stood there not knowing what to do. Suddenly she felt her body lose control, and she just grabbed Ajax and pulled him into a hug before crying, thinking this was where she died. Out from the cottage, out came Uriel. His footsteps were light on the grass. As he got closer, he bent down to look at Lumi, and in a calm, caring voice he said, Dix Nox and we came to the decision to spare you, but it's late, so go clean up and you can sleep here tonight. We'll talk after tomorrow's festival. Uriel stood up and began walking towards the wall, disappearing as he walked through it. Lumi and Aj stared at each other before crying once more. They weren't going to die, they thought. Both Ajax and Lumi stood up prepared to head inside. Letting Ajax go ahead of her, Lumi contemplated running away. Knowing how strong these humans are, I won't make it far, she thought, while staring at Ajax. I think I'm falling in love with that man. Lumi carried on inside, where she ate the cold stew she left on the table. She wasn't sure she could trust Dix Nox, but she felt a sense of security being in his old cottage. She laid down in a bed. It was soft and warm. As Lumi closed her eyes, she fell asleep quickly. The day was beautiful. A clear blue sky with birds chirping. Lumi was waking up, and as she made her way down the stairs of the old cottage, the stairs creaked under her. As Lumi reached the bottom, a wonderful smell filled her nose, and as she turned the corner she saw Dix Nox cooking some food on a pan. She couldn't see what it was. Hey, what are you cooking? Lumi asked, still having a look of worry on her. Dix Nox turned around, his grey eyes glinting in the light, and he spoke calmly, morning. I'm making omelettes. That sounds delicious. Can I ask where Ajax is? Lumi replied, her voice calm. Still sleeping, Dix Nox replied while plating an omelette. Lumi walked over to the table. The once steel chair was back to being wood. As Lumi sat down, Dix Nox brought over a plate to her, and he sat down ahead of her. Lumi stared at Dix Nox. She was worried that he would try to attack her again, now that Ajax wasn't here to help. Lumi waited as Dix Nox took the first bite of his omelette before she started eating hers. Lumi, I've never had an extended conversation with a god before. They either just die too quickly or never have enough time in our fight, Dix Nox said, his voice filling with intrigue. So I'd like to have a little chat before Ajax wakes up. Oh, right then, Lumi responded. How many gods remain outside of you? In truth, you barely killed any of us. The number of gods is still plenty. I thought I would have killed more. You've only killed a handful of half-gods. Half-gods? You mean the hero types? No, half-gods, the heroes that you are referring to are quarter-gods. Lumi, based on what you've seen of me yesterday, could I beat a full god? I'm sorry to say, but no, Lumi replied. Both of them continued to eat in silence as Dix Nox was deep in thought. Both Lumi and Dix Nox hear creaking behind them. Lumi turns to look while Dix Nox continues to eat his omelette. As the creaking gets louder, Ajax turns the corner and looks at Lumi, then at Dix Nox. Omelettes? It smells delicious. It's a shame I'm allergic to eggs, Ajax asked Dix Nox. Morning, I figured you were allergic. I made you some bacon, Dix replied. Dix Nox stood up from his seat and walked over toward the kitchen, the floor creaking under his feet. He picked up a plate from the counter and walked over to Ajax before handing him the plate. The bacon had a smoky aroma. "How did you know I was allergic to eggs?" Ajax asked, his voice frightened. "Trade secret," Ajax Nox replied. "Thanks for the food," Ajax answered. "What were you two talking about?" "I was telling him if he fought a full god, he'd lose," Lumi replied. "You called him the god beheader last night?" Ajax asked. "Why?" "Because I beheaded gods," Ajax Nox answered, cutting off Lumi. "Half gods," Lumi corrected. "What is the difference between a half god and a full one?" Ajax asked, while he took his seat and started eating his bacon. Lumi quickly put the omelette in her mouth, and with food in her mouth, she answered, "Mostly power. Full gods are gods that are 100% the god's race, while half gods are half god, half not." Swallowing her food, and then there are quarter gods, where are typically more mortal than god and are known as heroes. The three of them continued talking throughout their breakfast. Once it became noon, there was a knock at the cottage. Ajax Nox stood up, walking toward the door before opening it, revealing Uriel. "Afternoon, everyone. It is great to see Ajax didn't kill you in your sleep," Uriel said jokingly. "Would he actually do that?" Ajax asked. "Honestly, I doubt he would. He seems to prefer actually fighting the people," Uriel answered. "But then again, you wouldn't put up much of a fight if he fought you all out." "How powerful is he?" Ajax asked. "Uriel, don't answer that. He doesn't need to know," Ajax Nox interjected. "Fine, all right, I won't tell him," Uriel replied, turning toward Lumi. "Did you have another dream last night?" "It's hard to say. It looked like a dream was beginning, but then it just stopped. A message appeared that said, 'Ability cancelled.' It was in a robotic voice," Lumi answered. Uriel was silently thinking, before asking, "Do you think it was this EGS you mentioned yesterday?" "How could it be? Hidden types are supposed to be impossible to figure out. I understand he is extremely strong, but how would he figure out a counter after it was used once on him?" Lumi replied. "Indeed, it doesn't sound possible," Ajax Nox interjected. "I don't understand any of this stuff. Could you explain it simply for me?" Ajax asked. "Hidden types follow different rules of magic, and so are pretty much impossible to learn and figure out, as the spells don't actually tell you anything," Lumi answered. The four of them talked for what seemed like hours before Uriel walked out of the house. It was getting late, and the moon was starting to come up. The remaining three decided to call it a night on the talking. "Hey, Ajax Nox, where did Uriel go?" Lumi asked. "He went to the festival with his family," Ajax Nox answered. "Yeah, it's the festival surrounding the oakish elder wood tree. It happens annually," Ajax answered. "Then let's go there. I haven't ever been to a festival," Lumi responded. "Sure, sounds like fun," Ajax answered. Lumi and Ajax went into their rooms to put on some nice clothes. After an hour, Lumi walked down the stairs lightly creaking under her feet. Ajax was already done, and was waiting for her. The two of them left the cottage. It was still bright outside, and there was a stunning sunset, the sky a beautiful hue of orange and purple. "I'll meet you two there later," Ajax Nox yelled toward Lumi and Ajax. The two of them walked in silence toward the festival. As they approached the tree, the sounds of people having fun became louder, and the two of them reached the festival. Lumi and Ajax were walking through the busy stalls, with wonder on their faces. "Why are they selling wooden swords?" Lumi asked. "It's because of the tree, and it said that weapons made from it were extremely powerful. Did anyone ever wield such a weapon?" "There was a man, dating back 10,000 years. He is pretty much lost to time. All that is known of him is he founded this kingdom and created the monster hunters and the adventurers." "What happened to him?" "He died to a snow serpent. It's a massive serpent monster that lives on a mountain range south of here." "We should go there one day." "Yes, one day we'll go," Ajax answered. Lumi and Ajax kept walking, before spotting Uriel. He was talking with a woman they'd never seen before. She was a bit taller than him, and had deep red hair. Lumi and Ajax walked over to Uriel and the woman. She had gorgeous golden eyes. "Hello, Uriel, I didn't expect I'd see you here. And may I ask who this is?" Lumi asked. "Oh, hello Lumi, I didn't see you there. This is my wife," Uriel answered. "Rose, this is Lumi, she is a friend of mine. And Lumi, this is Rose, my wife." "Uriel, I didn't know you were married," Ajax asked. "I also have 2 kids. They are off playing at the moment," Uriel replied, "both girls." The 4 of them continued to experience the joys of the festival, eating the yakitori, and having a blast. Rose had a little too much to drink, and was a bit tipsy. After some time, Uriel and Rose split up to look for their kids, and Ajax went to the bathroom, while Lumi was left alone to enjoy the festival. Lumi continued to walk around. She was somewhat happy being away from Ajax a bit. Meeting Uriel and his wife made the feelings she had for Ajax more apparent, and she could barely keep it in around him. As Lumi walked from stall to stall, she felt an arm get wrapped around her shoulder. And a cold, uncaring voice came with it. "Lumi, it's great to see you again. It's such a shame you couldn't have seen my fight with Kaelin," Ansgar said. "Ansgar, is that you?" Lumi asked. "Yes, it is. It's so nice to see you. It's great to see love in life, wouldn't you agree?" "What are you talking about?" "There is you with Ajax, Uriel with Rose, and Dix Nox and his past." "What are you talking about?" "There is no need to be scared. I'm not here to kill you." "From the way you're speaking, I doubt it." "You'd already be dead if I wanted to do it, Miss Lumi, the god." How did you figure that out?" "You'll learn one day," Ansgar said before walking away and disappearing before Lumi could chase him. Lumi stood there, completely unmoving. Her eyes were wide open and her breathing short and rapid. She walked over to a nearby seat, trying not to fall over. After a few minutes of her sitting down, Ajax came looking for her. "Lumi, what happened? You look so pale," Ajax asked. He looked worried. "I just saw Ansgar. I don't know how, but he knew of me being a god." "That shouldn't be possible. We only spoke about it with Dix and Uriel." "We should go find Uriel and Dix Nox. I'll go find Dix Nox. You look for Uriel." "Is there a reason?" "It's not like we can find him again." The way he spoke, it sounded like something bad was going to happen today, Lumi responded. Lumi struggled to stand up. Her heart rate was rapid and loud, and Lumi and Ajax ran in opposite directions. As time passed, Lumi was running before running into something hard and stiff. It was Dix Nox. Lumi looked up at Dix Nox before gasping for air, trying to catch her breath. "Lumi, what's wrong?" Dix Nox asked. "I spoke with Ansgar. He knows about me being a god, about Uriel's wife, and about your past." "Did you tell it to him?" "He just knew. I have no clue how." "Anything else?" "It sounded like something bad was happening today," Lumi responded. As Lumi finished talking, Ajax turned the corner from the other side of the festival. He began to jog over, his short breaths audible over the distance. "Lumi, did you see Uriel? I couldn't find him anywhere," Ajax said, stopping to catch his breath. Lumi and Dix Nox began walking over toward Ajax. Lumi had a feeling that something was very wrong. As she approached Ajax, a massive black cloud swept past Ajax faster than what Lumi or Dix Nox could react to. Lumi's face filled with shock as she began to run toward the cloud, tears forming in her eyes. The black clouds began to disappear, behind them a trail of destruction, and Ajax was completely gone.